I guess I can start at the beginning. My name is Matthew Von Esch. I am 31 years old. I live in North Central Florida. I grew up here in my hometown. I was homeschooled in an evangelical Christian household with parents that loved their kids very much and used church and their faith practice as part of our upbringing. And that was the way in which I was brought up in the world, and that was my worldview. If I think about my worldview from less of I believe these core foundational ideas about how the world was made, blah, 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 and I look at my personal worldview, the way I perceive myself and other people in the world, my worldview deep down at my core is my value is inherently tied to the love and the care that I give to other people. And if I'm not loving and caring to other people, I am being an immoral person and I'm not worthy of love. My worldview is very other-centered. Other people's perceptions, other people's ways of being, other people, what they believe and don't believe, is always an external source that I then reflect back to them. I believe that's my core belief as a person, and it's also my child wound. And so what that means is, as a person in the world, I have grown accustomed to decentering myself and my way of being. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want. To exist as this person in the world and to be suddenly hit with this realization that I don't know who I am. I don't know who I want, what I want. I don't know my place in the world. And I'm 31 years old in this huge moment of transition in my life. And that's really a scary thing. When people are in transition, divorce or end of relationship, job loss, moving, death of a loved one, and all sort of plethora of sort of griefs that we experience in this lifetime, when we're in those vulnerable places, there are two things that can show up in a person's life, and they function in very similar ways. One is cult-like spiritual practices and communities, and two are abusive relationship partners. Mentally, I know this. Telling the parts of my heart and my shredded nervous system to pay attention and listen to that is really fucking hard, and I'm terrified. So alongside this main belief that I've held my entire life, it's a child wound that my parents inflicted on me, particularly my father. I can identify the wound of origin in my life. I can identify that. What I'm now dealing with now is I am a 31-year-old person in the world who has autonomy to exist in the world. I can acknowledge that core wound. I can go back to it and work on healing it, but I have to do that work in myself. My father can't do that for me. Even if he was in a place emotionally where he could, he cannot do that work for me. I have to do that work in myself, because as a result of those wounds, I have generated patterns in my life that I see and have seen played out again and again and again. And those patterns have been unhealthy for me. I have seen those patterns play out in my relationships, my romantic partners, and in particular, my one romantic partner who I will talk about momentarily, and my friendships. It also has existed in my workplace and the way in which I work with my family members now. If I'm unhappy with my life and I see the life choices that I'm making that are detrimental to me and my happiness as a person, I need to be willing to put the work in to work on healing those parts of me that have been so broken. And I need to work on those things that can supply me the tools that I need to do that inner work and to slowly change and to slowly heal myself. I was still living at home in my 20s. I was very unhappy. I was overweight. I was depressed. I felt very disconnected from my body. I wasn't happy there any longer. I no longer was aligned with my parents' faith practice, but felt like I had to perform in order for myself to receive love. And so I showed up and presented something that they wanted of me. And it wasn't my authentic self. It was dishonest. And it was a disservice, I think. I knew I needed to get out of that situation. And so I finally moved out. I moved into my own space, got a roommate, and I got into a relationship with somebody. This person was a factor in me actually getting my shit together and leaving my home of origin, because he told me that he wasn't interested in dating somebody who hadn't come out to his parents yet and was still sort of in this in-between liminal space, which is very understandable. But I note this because it's interesting. The catalyst for change that needed to happen in my life, which is I need to move out of my parents' space, I need to create autonomy for myself. Ultimately, I wasn't the one that made that push happen. This other person came along and played that role for me. And so I placated to his wishes instead of my parents in order for me to make that move happen. And it's a slow step. I made it out of my home of origin. Congratulations. I managed to check off the box in terms of millennial goals for being a person in the world. You left your parents' basement. I still did it for somebody else. To spare myself, and quite frankly, to spare this person who I spent the next 5 years with, I will say this upon the ending of things with him. I am proud of myself because I realized at a certain point that I needed to step away from the relationship. And I'm proud of myself because in a way that mirrored the way in which I left my home with my family, because it was no longer safe for me to be there and it was no longer healthy for me to be there, I stepped away and ended that relationship. But in that moment, it was on my terms. And it wasn't from outside prompting that did it. I shored it up enough in myself to know that I needed to make a change for myself that was healthy. And so I chose to move on. I went back to my parents' house. Wow. The return of the millennial adult child to the home of origin. It feels so archetypal now. I know 2 other friends who are also experiencing the same thing with me for various reasons. They're also at their home of origin with their parents. Again, as 30-something-year-olds.